Yeah, welcome to another episode of the Racer X Exhaust Podcast. I'm Jason Wygant. This is all brought to you by Yoshimura. Yoshimura-RD.com is your place to learn about their lineup of exhaust systems, everything from your ATV, your side-by-side, your dirt bike, your street bike, your mini. They've got it. If it's a four-stroke, they've been making exhaust systems for it for a long time. Nearly 7 decades of experience doing it now. And also a new wing of the company, YoshimuraCycling.com. Check out the new Chileo pedal made in the USA, except for one small bearing they tell me is made in Japan. But otherwise made in the USA, as are the exhaust systems. I know you wouldn't think Yoshimura is making exhaust systems in the US, but I've seen it, and it's real. Also, this podcast being brought to you by MX Tech Suspension, manufacturing professional aftermarket suspension for riders who want excellent comfort and control. Their quality engineering is based on a lifetime of specializing in dirt bike suspension, and because of that, they developed the Lucky Fork, which features dual springs, dual cartridges, Huck valves, and is ultra lightweight. And because it's Lucky, it actually allows you to put your transponder further forward on the fork, so your lap times are fast. I'm just joking. I just wanted to know if you were really listening to this, or maybe you hit the fast forward button and you figured there was nothing interesting to say. No, the Lucky Fork does not affect the transponder or timing and scoring. However, MX Tech does utilize the latest in technology and coatings to deliver max performance while remaining the lightest shock available. Head over to mxtech.com for more information. So I'm Jason Wygant. This is the Racer X Podcast Network. Make sure to subscribe, maybe leave a review if it's good. You can leave your terrible comments to yourself, just like your mom said. Leave us a review. Give us 5 stars, 10 if you want. I don't think it's allowed, but go for it. We have some great shows on here if you subscribe. Not only this Exhaust podcast, but also Daniel Blair's Main Event Moto podcast and the Moto Marketing podcast. All really popular, all good stuff right here. And a shout out to one more sponsor, Psychic MX, full-range motocross brand. From engine internals to your everyday wear and tear parts, from your weekend warriors to full-on race guys, they have everything you need. So check them out, psychicmx.com, or visit your local dealer today. And today, we have Chad Reed. Feld's been doing a really good job here at Monster Energy Supercross, putting together press sessions for the media, since they cannot provide us with traditional press time at the races. So last night, Thursday night, they set up a call with Chad Reed. And with all the drama going on, the 250 championships, both of them on the line this Sunday, and Eli Tomac trying to wrap up the 450 title this Sunday, somewhat overshadowed is the fact that this could be the last dirt bike race in Chad Reed's career. Could. He will address that here with a media session hosted by Daniel Blair. You had Ralph Shaheen and Ricky Carmichael in there asking questions, and then they opened up to the media, folks like myself. I think there's going to be a blizzard of Chad Reed podcast, honestly, coming out over the next month. When he's back here in the North Carolina area, I'm going to try to get one-on-one with him and Ellie to try to get a different side of the Chad Reed story. He touches on the part that I think I am most intrigued by. We've heard so much from Chad Reed through the years, but what I really want to really dive into, and what I will get to, I will make this podcast happen, is just how gnarly things were in his peak years. I hate when I have people just piling on and saying, oh man, today's rider's this, today's rider's that. Dude, today's riders, from a media perspective, are so easy to work with. They are so jovial. They are so full of personality. They are so open and honest. If you were around, as I was, in the media game in 2005, 6-ish, it was so gnarly. There was so much, really there was more money on the line. And that led to more scrutiny, more pressure, more entourage, bigger posse. And I would host the post-race press conferences for Supercross back then. And whatever Chad Reed said, you saw Carmichael and Stewart's people in the back of the room taking notes, nodding their head, shaking their head. Same thing. Whatever Ricky said, you were looking at James's guy to see how they would react. It was so tense back then. The crews all hated each other. There was so much rivalry. Now you see a little bit of it. I don't think the Tomac gang and the Kawasaki gang, I don't think they're huge KTM Husqvarna fans, okay? But I don't think it's anything like the tension that I saw between the Reed, Stewart, Carmichael thing. It was a real zenith era for least fun, most serious. And at the time, it probably wasn't cool to be in it. But as you will hear Reed reflect on in this podcast, now that he looks back, he really takes pride in that, because having to race Carmichael and Stewart, and then later on, Ryan Dungey and Ryan Villopoto, you can, I don't know if you can say it's the gnarliest era ever for sure, but you can definitely say no other era was gnarlier. It's either the peak or it's tied with something else. But to battle Stu, Carmichael, Villopoto, and Dunge for years, as Reed did, that is creme de la creme right there. It's about as gnarly as it gets. I guess having to go against McGrath one-on-one in his prime would probably be harder. But multiple riders this good, year in, year out, now Chad wears that with a lot of pride, and I really like that. Many other cool things coming from Chad here, including the fact that he would like to be a team manager, and he even names the team that could use his help the most. I feel like they've been there, done that, but who knows? Anyway, here's Chad Reed. But before I get to it, don't forget racerxonline.com/Weege to subscribe to the magazine, and we have a giveaway of a Specialized Turbo Levo E mountain bike, and we'll give you gear. And if you haven't ridden one of these, well, I feel bad, because your life will change. Any preconceptions you have that is negative about these bikes will change once you ride one. They feel just like mountain bikes. They feel just like mountain bikes. But that little extra pedal assist changes a game completely. You will still get a workout if you ride one of these. It's just a lot more fun. All right, let's get to Chad Reed.
Hello, Supercross fans. Thank you for tuning in again to another Zoom call. This time a little bit different than what we've been doing since we've been in Salt Lake City. We're going one-on-one with a very special guest. Before we do, I do want to say thank you to all the fans that have been tuning in to these Zoom calls, to the press conferences, and, of course, watching the races and engaging with everybody here at Supercross. It's been an interesting experience. It's been difficult in some ways, but really rewarding in others. And your guys' engagement has made it all worth it. So thank you all for tuning in. And one more race for 2020. And it's coming up in a couple days. It's going to be fun. Thank you all again. Joining me today, Chad Reed. One last ride. Well, actually, I'm going to kick things off with a question, and it's involves that phrase, Chad. One last ride. On the podium, you teased us a little bit the other night. And I don't, that's not nice. You need to go into a little bit more detail, but you said you might, maybe, some races in 2021. So the question is this really one last ride on Sunday, or is there maybe a little more?
For me, I was never able to, I never trusted myself. It was always this is an end of a full-time racing career. I no longer have that burning desire to want to work year round to do a 17-round series anymore. But yeah, jumping in and doing some races, whether that's here in the US or on a Europe, Australia, whatever. And then obviously with the ending that we're currently experiencing, it's far from what I pictured as my last 7 races. And that doesn't need to be a negative. It's not that I'm talking that that these races suck or anything like that. It's just a very different feeling, like I decided to race this year fully based on the fact that, that I wanted to kind of say my goodbyes and enjoy, multiple stadiums around the country. And I didn't get that opportunity. We're really just, 6 stadiums short of what I originally had planned out to do.
So a big maybe.
Yeah, as I sit here today and I'm in shape and I'm racing, I absolutely want to come back and race. As I start to phase out and start looking at car data and racing 4 wheels and all these kinds of things, do I have the motivation to want to get back into shape and and the work that it takes to qualify and race these races? That's the unknown. But sitting here today, emotionally, physically, I don't want this to be the end right now. I really want to race some races next year. I think that'd be really fun, to experience fans again. And just what I get from racing in front of fans and when they turn the lights off, do opening ceremonies, the fireworks, the anthem, all those things. That's what I want to experience that one last time.
All right, we'll leave the door open for you. You can come back. Trust me, everybody would welcome you back in a heartbeat. So hopefully when the summer and the fall comes around, you're engaged and you're excited, because we'd love to have you back for some more. I'm going to open things up to the media. I want to start with Ricky Carmichael. I know you guys go way back, and I mean, I know it was contentious at times, but you guys have developed into great friends. Love hearing you guys talk. So Ricky, what do you got for Chad?
Yeah, I really don't want to hash out all of our battles. I mean, we both know we have an incredible amount of respect for each other, and Chad is probably one of the toughest, most grittiest competitors that I've personally ever raced against, and we both have spoken about that openly, and I really value our friendship. But what I would like to ask you, Reedy, is, you had 22 Motorsports. You ran a really good operation. You know what it takes to win. You know the personnel that it takes to win. All that fun stuff. Trying to look ahead, say 5, 6, 7 years from now. Obviously, I know you would love to be successful in 4-wheel car racing and be doing that until you can completely retire from racing any kind of motorsports, doing it professionally. Do you have any inspiration to someday be like a team manager? Like what do you do? What's life look like after racing? Do you want to do like team management, run a team? Do you want to be like the next Roger DeCoster? Have you thought of that?
Great question, because I mean, I love it. I feel like a lot of people retire. There's a few reasons. A lot of people just don't want to travel anymore. It's a gnarly schedule. The schedule doesn't scare me. I'm probably most fearful of not being able to pack my bag and get on a plane 17 times a year. I actually have more fear from that than anything. So I love it. I would love the position, and I think that you Roger DeCoster. If I was to put effort and to go and do something, you'd want to be Roger, because it's so hard being and seeing what I've seen and know what I know and running my own race team and seeing what makes a team successful and what makes a team fail. I think that you have to be in the position of a Roger to be the guy that if you make bad choices, you fail. And then if you make good choices, you win. Anything in between that line is probably where I struggle the most with every individual in our sport. So I wouldn't want to be that person. But I would have a huge desire to take over a factory race team at the highest level, like a Roger DeCoster.
Yeah, and would you be open to any manufacturer that you felt would give you the best opportunity, the best resources, whether it was Cowie, Honda, Suzuki, KTM, Yamaha, whoever that would be? You'd be open for it, so long as they gave you the resources.
Give you the resources and give you the reins to be successful. Don't give you just enough reins to hang yourself. Give you enough to go out and get the job done. It's always hard to talk about this while you're still racing, but I mean, never really shied away. But I think that Yamaha probably needs my helps the most.
That seems like the most fit.
It's near and dear to my heart. I have a lot of successful years. The years that you look back on and think, man, they were the cool years. They were fun. I was riding blue, so to see them at the level that they're at now is less than the highest level, in my opinion. So a team like that would be fun. But with saying that, you want to be involved in a company that's thriving to build rad motorcycles, and people that are producing motorcycles at near the weight limit and and pushing that envelope like KTM Husky are. Roger's got himself a fun project.
Yeah, he does. And if there was one thing and the biggest thing you would change right now to better the sport so that everybody and athletes 20 years from now, racers 20 years from now, could benefit from just one thing, that off the top of your head, what would it be?
Right now, probably because it's a little bit more fresh, because I've been watching the telecast and, seeing guys like Shane McElrath pointing out, seeing how soft the East Coast is, and seeing that, Jeremy Martin sitting out the last 3 races. I don't know that that's healthy for our sport right now. I think that names and high quality individuals in the series is important. So I think that needs to be addressed. I do, as an athlete, it hurts me to say this, but I do believe that there needs to be some form of a salary cap in the lights class. I think that that's more important than capping them on how many years, because everybody develops differently. Yourself, myself, James, for instance, we were destined to get to the top as fast as we could. Not everybody has that luxury of, fast tracking and getting there. And McElrath is really coming into his own. And I think that to lose him, like, where's he going to go? I don't know where he's going. I don't think that there's a quality race team in a 450 class for him. And I think that one more year, and I don't care what his age is. I just think that everybody develops differently. And I think one more year would probably make him a better rider, a better athlete, a better, racer, all those things. And I think it would just make our series better.
That's awesome. I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. That's fantastic. All right. Thank you for your time, bud. We're all proud of you. I know I most certainly am. It's disappointing that your swan song season got disrupted by the pandemic, but I don't think anyone understood that. But finish strong on Sunday, buddy, so we can go enjoy ourselves.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, Ricky. Ralph Shaheen. Do unmute.
I think Ralph's wrestling bears.
How's that?
There you go.
That work? Well, Reedy, I've been very fortunate to call many of your races, and it's been a real honor in my career to do so. And throughout those calls, many times I've called you the grittiest athlete in the sport, certainly, and the grittiest racer I've ever seen. And I was wondering how you felt about that term being associated with you. For me, it was nothing but a compliment as to how tough you were and your willingness to fight through anything to get onto the top step of the podium. Personally, I'll never forget that night in Detroit and everything you went through there. So I was curious about that term, and if that was something you took pride in as far as how you raced, trying to be that type of athlete. And then what would be, in your opinion, the grittiest moment that you ever fought through in your Supercross career?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved the term, Ralph. I've never frowned upon it or anything like that. For me, it was always the fear of not racing and not being able to compete. There's so many times in my career I could say that it was ridiculous to try to swing a leg over a dirt bike. But the fact of like sitting in the stands or sitting in my motorhome always seemed way more painful than getting out and trying to race against the best dudes in the world. And I was thankful that for the most part I always pulled it off and done quite well while doing that. As far as the grittiest, probably the two that come to mind would be 2006 Daytona. I crashed heavily on a Thursday, I believe. It was kind of a weird story, but I separated my shoulder, couldn't move it. Went and got x-rays. While they're doing x-rays, they make you hold weights. And then while doing that, I passed out and knocked myself out. So then I woke up having to go get a CAT scan as well. So not only did I got knocked out from not crashing, but from falling over in the hospital. So showing up a couple of days later with a concussion and a shoulder that I couldn't even move, and somehow I went and got second in the race. That was pretty damn cool. And then obviously Detroit, like you said, I mean, a pretty good grip on things as far as like winning races, being on the podium. Had a pretty good handle of Kevin and Davey Millsaps that year. And then, essentially bike bogging and then just coughing up a ridiculous amount of blood. I've never seen so much blood come from my mouth before. And so I was scared, and then back in those days when manufacturers had a little bit more power, Wyndham's Camp and Honda were able to force a what do you call it? A physical, like I had to pass a certain physical for me to race that night. And then, I had to get up and out of bed and check myself out of hospital. Still showed up at opening ceremonies with the wristband. And I think I got 12th that night or something like that. But I was in a lot of pain.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Jason Wygant.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Jason Wygant from RacerX. To actually piggyback off of what Ralph was saying, Chad, that grittiness, that refuse to lose thing has always been your trademark. How much of that is something you've always had? How much of that is a cultural thing? Because we see a lot of motorsports where Australians are much stronger than probably the population would lead you to think. For how small of a country it is on the global scale in motorsports, it's unbelievable what all you folks have done. And how much comes from your wife, who might actually be grittier than you when it comes to motivating people. So where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, it comes deep in from even prior to Ellie. I remember, I grew up in a town called Newcastle. We had there was a Supercross in Newcastle. I went out, broke my wrist in practice. Friends, family, your schoolmates are all going to be there. Because back in Australia, we got to race Supercross from when we were 12 years old and go and race with the pros. So basically, I didn't really want to go to the hospital, and I didn't really want to let on to Dad that I was hurt, because Dad would have lost his mind. So I just basically said, "Hey, Mom, I think we're going to have to tape this thing up. I got a bit of a sore wrist." Raced the race, woke up the next morning, couldn't move my wrist. Mom had to take me. I got a cast on my wrist. I won the race. Things like that. I went pro at 15. I was living by myself in New Zealand. Fell over, broke my collarbone. I was too scared to call my mom and dad to tell them that I broke my collarbone. So basically I took a week and a half, 2 weeks off, and just started riding and racing back in 2 weeks. So it's kind of one of those things that I was always just too afraid to be off the bike, or basically confront people like my mom and dad and now Ellie.
David Iser. Unmute.
Chad, David Iser, DMXS Radio. I've been fortunate enough to cover every lap of your racing here in America, and it's been a privilege. No matter what manufacturer you're on, what team you're on, you've always resonated with the fans, even coming from a different country. I want to know why they're so important to you, and why you think over the entire span of your career that's been a constant with you and the fans.
I was really fortunate. I did a podcast earlier today, and going back and talking through earlier years, I was really fortunate that I basically loved Jeremy and replicated Jeremy. And fortunately for me, there was this young punk, Ricky Carmichael, who came and kind of, stole the crown from the king. And so people loved to hate him, and they needed somebody else to love, because Jeremy was on his way out. And I kind of inherited Jeremy's side of the side of the fence. So I was really fortunate. Fans were always on my side early in those years. And, the Pastrana days of running into Ricky and all that just really fueled everything in my favor. And of course, I may or may not have played off of that a little bit and had a bit of fun with it. And they were the good years for sure. They were fun.
Looking back to the history of the sport, you've done all you can possibly do on the bike, on the track, on and off the track, and now history will judge you. What do you hope in years past that your legacy will leave, that people will say about Chad Reed and his time in the sport?
I think as far as a legacy, I think your legacy writes itself. I think that what people think of me or how they remember me is their choice for that. I don't know that I have a thing that I'm like, I want to be remembered for this, because I don't think that that's the correct way. The one thing that I would like to be remembered is just a guy that did it his own way. It may not have, from the outside looking in, might not have looked like the right way or the correct way or the best way. But every decision I made was the decision that was best for me at the time. And I stuck by that, and there's been teams I loved. There've been teams I didn't really love. I've been critical of, people and personnel and the influence that they have. And I put my money where my mouth was. I ran my own team. We were successful. We almost won titles, running it, owning it, spending money, all those kinds of things. And I would just say that's the only input I would have on it, is just, I always did it my way. It didn't really matter. Like 9 times out of 10, whatever my agent told me, I would do the opposite because I didn't believe in it. And I just always I just did my own thing, really,
Well, not that you'd ask my opinion, but 2022 has a pretty good ring to it for you to retire. Thanks for your time, brother.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, Iser. We're hoping for one more. All right, asking for 2 is maybe a little bit much, but
hey, you got to shoot for the brother.
Pull some strings, Daniel. Get me straight to the main, and I'll come back in 2022.
I'll work on the format for you. I'm sure Ellie would like to go to 2022 also. I like how every seat she chooses here is seat 22.
Right.
Next one, we'll go to Alex Gobert.
Hey, Chad. Obviously, during your career, we've seen a lot of guys retire, in their 20s. For you, you're at late 30s now. So was there ever any point where your mindset shifted from contending for championships, where you did for such a long time? Was there a moment where you were like, hey, I want to extend this to when I'm approaching 40, possibly even coming back to try and race a main event at 40? Do you remember when there was any type of shift there for you?
For me, the shift happened overnight. I hadn't really contemplated or thought anything other than racing motorcycles until I raced cars last year. I always thought as long as I love it, as long as I wake up in the morning and want to be better at it, as long as I go to sleep thinking about it at night, as long as I really want to do it. And then I started doing some car racing last year, and my thoughts at night, my mind was consumed by something completely different. And for me, that was the sign. It literally happened overnight, and that was it. I've mentioned this year that it would be nice to race at 40. But that's really just me, saying what I would love to do. Can I do it? I'm not sure. But yeah, I was fully 100% motorcycle racing Supercross, 2007 was probably the closest that I ever came to being like, I've had enough. At that point, it was a weird moment. It was kind of like Ricky had retired. A big part of my motivation and that work ethic came from, racing a guy like Ricky. And when that was gone, I had to find new motivation. And yeah, James was there, but it was different. Back in those days, I was quite popular in Australia. I did a V8 supercar test with 888. I really enjoyed that. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is my new route, but when it came to fulfilling and saying, all right, I'm quitting, I'm retiring, I just could never do it. This is the first time that I felt that I could do it is you heard it from my mouth in Australia.
When you think back to, say, Jeremy's days, into your era when James came along as well, and also Ricky as well, looking at it now, here we are in 2020, have you seen much of an evolution in technique as a rider, since, I suppose, 15 years ago, past 15 years?
There's been many different evolutions. And truthfully, the evolution kind of started and ended with James. James James kind of brung the scrub, and now you just see different versions of that. For the most part, you just see it at a younger age. It seems like kids on 50s can scrub now. Can't go through a turn, but they can scrub. And I think that's probably been the change. That's the difference. But as far as like, just as recently as this weekend, I mean, watching the 450 main event, what got the job done 20 years ago is still what gets the job done. It's not like, you're seeing a couple of seasons under a Cooper Webb's belt, and he's not scrubbing every little jump and scraping foot pegs off the finish line anymore. You find an efficient way to do it. So when a lights guy comes in, it's like they're dragging foot pegs, and then, like I think Adam Cincerello is the perfect guy. Look how aggressive he is, how fast he was. I mean, I think for the first 8 races, he was the fastest guy in qualifying. But he ain't here for the end of it. He will learn quickly that a 450, reacts differently. He'll find an efficient way to get the job done. And I think he'll be really, really good and a future champion like Cooper, and it takes time to figure that out.
Michael Antonovich.
Thanks, Daniel. Chad, for you, we've always known how important the fans are to you, all the things that go along with that. But I think most eye-opening about this time in Utah is the way that you and the other riders that are on the starting gate, the Kyle Cunninghams, the Benny Blosses, the Tevin Tapias of the world, have interacted with you in this last few years of your career. How has it been for you to see the direct influence you had on this current generation of guys that are 10, 15 years younger than you that watched you growing up in like 2002 to 2008?
Yeah, it's been unique. Even Jason Anderson would tell me that he used to wear my replica goggles and, things like that. And, some of the stories like from a Chase Sexton, and it's like the stories they have are from like 06, 07, which is like midway through, and those guys are just only babies at that point. So, but like you said, like the Benny Blosses and Kyle Cunningham, those guys, I mean, everybody, they're all good kids, and it's been interesting to interact with them, to hear, their stories of how it used to be and how they viewed it on television at a young age. And now you're getting to, race with them. And it's hard to put that into words because it feels so surreal, because I don't go, oh yeah, I've been around forever. I feel like I'm 40 years old almost. I just think I'm one of the boys, but I'm a little more seasoned.
Okay. Opening ceremonies has always been an important thing for you. Everybody knows that when AC/DC comes on the stereo and the stadium's black, that you're going to come do a knack in the spotlight. But I think maybe the most important one you ever had was this year in Atlanta when all 3 of the kids came out and then Ellie met you guys on the starting line. If that's the last opening ceremonies that you get to do in this farewell season, how important was that and what was the emotion like?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought of it like that because I think we went to Daytona after that. So, pretty crazy. I mean, a surreal feeling, going and doing press day and, there's always so many restrictions. It's easier to talk about that. Like when we do these things, it's not like the riders, we have full reign and we like, hey, there's your racetrack, go ride it. We'll flag you down. We're very restricted what we can and can't do. This year I've been able to experience a couple of different things that I feel is, will stay with me for a while. One, being Anaheim 1, showing up to Anaheim 1 on a Thursday night and having an empty stadium and standing and doing it. And I didn't have any restrictions, and it actually felt weird and I didn't know what to do. Because there wasn't Mike LaRocco Sr. out there, in his yellow vest telling me, yelling at me, wanting to hit me with a yellow flag or something. And so that was a very unique situation. It was a very surreal moment. And then, turning the lights off and riding out with my 3 kids in Atlanta was quite a buzz too.
Cool. Thank you for everything. Good to see you. Enjoy this last one on Sunday and then wherever else we see you again.
Excuse me.
Steve Giberson.
Steve Giberson with Vital MX. Hey, Chad, over the course of a career, there's kind of a million different decisions that go into the whole thing. And over the span of the career. Looking back at it, is there anything that you wish you hadn't done or decisions that you would have made differently now?
I'm never one for looking back and saying, I wish I could have done it. And I don't know that I look back and go, I wish I had have changed or done this. But it's always fun to look back and go, what if I had done this instead of that? But there's no real one decision that I made. Because even when I think, like the one that comes to mind is 2013, Honda came out with a motorcycle that just, I couldn't gel with. I couldn't ride it. My relationship at Honda was getting a little better, and it was progressing, and it was great. And it made so much sense for us at 22 Motorsports to be based at the Honda factory race team, utilize their facility and all those kinds of things. But it made zero sense. Like, I couldn't ride the motorcycle. And so from a business standpoint, there was a better way to do things. But for me and my own performance, every decision I made was strictly to be better and to be able to win. And when you look at the decision I made in 2000, at the end of 13 to go into 14, I won races in 14. I was contending for the championship until I got hurt. And likely, I really confidently think that I had what it took to beat RV that year. So I wouldn't change it, because there's a racing mentality, and then there's a business mentality. And I didn't ever start a race team to make money. I just did it to, give myself the best outlet to win races and contend for championships.
We talked a minute ago about, potential as a team manager for the future. But what kind of team manager would you be? Would you be the warm and fuzzy guy, or would you be the guy that had riders quaking in their boots?
I don't know. I think I'd like to be somewhere in the middle. Like, I feel like, I look at the group that we currently have, and I think that some of them get away with a lot of things, and I feel like they need to be managed differently. And then others, you can let them do their own thing. And I think that's kind of what makes, and I've never done it. I've ran my own race team and I manage myself. But I haven't really ever been in control and whatever. So you don't really know, but the goal and what makes good and bad team managers or leaders, is people that can lead and and when they're struggling, you're there to pick them up. And when they're winning, knock them down a little bit, keep them motivated.
Thanks.
Kit Palmer.
Hey, Chad, you were talking about possibly doing another race next year, or a couple of races, or whatever. If you could, if you could just pick one stadium that's meant a lot to you, is there like one particular stadium that you would maybe like to have your final race in?
Chad, before you answer, we're not going to Qualcomm.
I was going to say Anaheim and Qualcomm. Can we not go to? I think that it's a vacant stadium. We should be there right now. That would be cool. But yeah, I would say there's always something special about Anaheim. My first win was there. I was such a huge fan of Jeremy. It was Jeremy's house. I don't know that. So there's always something unique about Anaheim. I'm tied with my favorite races, to be tied with Jeremy, Ricky, and James. All of us have 8 wins. Pretty crazy to think that the careers we had and the opportunities we had, and to the fact that we're all tied at 8, is pretty damn cool. Anaheim won. And when I talk Anaheim, I speak of Anaheim 1, just because when you show up to Anaheim, it doesn't matter how much training you did, how much testing you did. The best of the best come apart in Anaheim. Anaheim it just presents something very unique, whether it be pressure, whether it be rain, whether the dirt works guy that shapes the whoops and the jumps has a crazy idea over the winter and or the summer. He comes out with an idea and throws something that you haven't prepared for, or some along. So that's just the uniqueness of Anaheim 1 is what I love.
You've mentioned a couple of highlights of your career already, but is there any like 1, 2 that really, really stand out throughout your long career?
Depends. Is Ricky still on? I don't know. Like there's definitely certain races that they're just fun races, you know. My very first win in the 450 class, now 250 class back then, at Anaheim 1. You know, when you picture and you have a lifelong dream of making it to America, racing in a stadium that Jeremy built, you picture it being really hard fought and really hard. And I don't know if I remember, I think I was second out the gate, but went to the lead right away. And it was like literally the easiest race of my life. And so that one's memorable because of that. Daytona 05 is a go-to. Not just because I won, but the coreness, you know, the fact that you had David Bailey and Ricky Johnson, full legends of our sport, commentating. At one point just said, let's not even commentate. Let's just hear these guys. And it was on Ricky's helmet cam. Like I could watch that race over and over and over. The outcome is obviously awesome on my part. But I just think that you've seen two dudes just going at it on the gnarliest track ever, in a really fun era for me.
What about a low point?
Low point. Low points for me would be my crash in Millville. More just because still to this day, I can't wrap my hands or head around like what happened. Like I didn't do anything visually wrong, but the outcome was costly. I was hurt, but I wasn't hurt. You know, like I really wasn't that beat up. I was definitely tweaked in a couple of bumps and bruises, but mentally, it just ruined me. Like I couldn't regroup, you know, like the next weekend, I think we went to Washougal, and I should have just been able to jump back on the bike and protect a 20-point lead. But I was like somewhere outside the top 5 that weekend. And it was just because my mind, I was just like, I was scared, you know, like it actually scared me. And it took a long time to get that trust back and that feeling back.
Yeah, that's crazy. Thank you, Chad.
Thanks.
Mitch Kendra,
Racer X. So, Chad, obviously, we talked about all the accomplishments and the records and everything that you have. Obviously, you have a lot of the ones that you're in sole possession of and you're close with others. Just what's been the biggest takeaway that you've had away from the track in terms of like results and everything? Just what's the one thing that you can look back and, like you said, with the decisions and stuff, but just what's the one thing you're proudest of most in terms of like not, I won this race or that race?
For me, it's the era that I got to live, you know, growing up as a kid in Aussie, and then coming and racing. You know, I'm currently 4th on all-time win list, and depending on how long Eli chooses to go, may pass me. But what probably makes me most proud is when I came in, it was Ricky, then it was James, then it was the Ryans. And stopping at the Ryans and James and Ricky, like those dudes they're the greatest, you know, they're all in their own minds, some of the greatest that ever did this. And so for me to win as many races as I have, to being able to sustain a career like I have, has really been, you know, the evolution of trying to learn from each individual along the way. Because they all have their strengths and weaknesses, and it's that balance of figuring that out. And I just always found so much desire, so much fun, you know, trying to conquer that. And that's probably been my greatest achievement is that no matter, you know, the championships that I lost, the champion, you know, who I lost them to ain't no slouches.
And then if you could go back and tell, you know, 15, 16-year-old Chad Reed, everything that's happened now up to 2020 at this point, just what do you think he would say back then?
He wouldn't listen, so I wouldn't waste my time. I don't know what I could say because I feel like I was really, really fortunate to have those people in my life to tell me those things. But you don't have that perspective. And I think that it would be wrong to, to try to expect a 16-year-old, to have that perspective as well, because I didn't have that perspective until maybe child number 3. And I was in my early 30s. So yeah, I don't know what I could say, other than just instill into that 16-year-old how fast it goes. Though I've been around a long time, it feels like just yesterday I was going pro and I was a 16-year-old kid trying to conquer the world.
Awesome. Thanks.
Joey Barnes.
You talked earlier, Chad, about 6 stadiums short of the last Ride Tour, being able to race in front of fans. So when you look at coming back and doing a few races next year, are you looking to maybe knock out those 6 stadiums? That way you can kind of finish it out with those fans in the appropriate fashion you were hoping to do this year?
On a bad news to those 6 stadiums, no, not really. Indianapolis, I love. I would consider going to Indy. But like Seattle's probably been my worst ever event. If you go back and watch a highlight reel, it'll be me crashing in the first turn. I don't know that I've ever been to Seattle and not crashed in the first turn. So I don't know what my mojo is there, but ever since we've been going there, I've been crashing in the first turn. So that's definitely one that I would happily miss. Anaheim's, Daytona. Trying to think what else. Go back to Qualcomm. Places like that. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it kind of needs to be more of like a feeling, like kind of like feel like I'm in shape and, I want to do this race. And I haven't given it any thought at this point.
And then just the quick follow-up to that, kind of piggybacking off of what RC mentioned earlier, following Roger and maybe a team ownership role. Do you have kind of a timeline for that, since you are kind of moving to 4 wheels and are doing a little bit of a one-offs here and there back on the bike in the coming year?
Yeah, I really haven't given it any thought. There's so many things that I still don't like. It still hasn't sunk in, if I'm honest. It hasn't, like obviously doing these kinds of things and the opening ceremonies at the beginning of the season, they hit home. But right now I still feel, very amongst the racing and training and riding, and we've still got one to go. I can't wait to get home and ride my 2-stroke. So like I'm retiring, but I don't have the thought process of a retiring athlete yet.
Thanks, man. Good
I don't know if that's good or bad.
LeBig.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Stefan McGuinn with LeBigUSA.com. Chad, this is a question for the French fans are going to enjoy. I know there's a lot of respect with you and DV. Can you share a story when you were back teammates at Yamaha?
I was so fortunate to have teammates like DV and Tim Ferry. Talk about polar opposites, learn the American way and learn the French way. DV's a character. He hasn't ever wavered along the way in that particular sense. I would say the early years of DV was fun, like it was when he was fully committed to trying to win races and be a champion. I wouldn't say we butted heads, but we were very competitive. And that's what made it fun. He's very much your typical French rider in the fact that for one single lap, there's not many people better at it than the French. So there was days of the test track where I'm like, man, this dude's going to smoke me this weekend. And fortunately, I always was able to, rise to the occasion when the 20 lap, or should I say back in those days, the 25 points were handed out. But yeah, I have so many stories. We mess with each other, and there's one particular moment where I may or may not have put the sprinklers on him. That was a good time. We're out at the track, and he was doing these 1 lap sprints, and I wanted to go out. We wanted the water so I could go do a moto. So eventually I just turned the sprinklers on him, and he didn't like that. He threw his helmet, bike, and ended up. We basically made a scarecrow. On the Yamaha fence, we put his helmet on the fence pole, and then his jersey, and so it's kind of like a scarecrow DV. But yeah, we had to. There was a few phone calls that we had to answer from Yamaha about some of the things that we would do to each other.
Thank you, Chad, for everything.
Josh Mosman.
What's going on? Josh Mosman, Motocross Action Magazine. Chad, I always like to ask guys what their motivation is for racing and just for pushing through in Supercross, Motocross. You're constantly pushing against competitors, injuries, all kinds of adversity. It's hard for everybody, no matter how good you are. What was your motivation at the beginning? What's your motivation now? And how is your motivation from year to year changed as you as a rider and as a person?
I would say for me, it's a motivation / feeling. There's a feeling that you achieve at the highest level of conquering a 450 around a Supercross track, or just a dirt bike around a Supercross track. You know, when you're hitting your marks, you know, because it's recent, but like the mud race we had last week or whatever it was in Salt Lake, and 2 individuals rode a racetrack that was completely different than the rest of the 20. And I've been fortunate to be in that position where those 2 rode the easiest track ever. I can promise you. What they rode and what we felt or whatever was completely different. And it's just so fun when you can find that feeling and you can find it. And it's still today, like at 38 years old, there's not a feeling better than going out and executing and feeling like you nailed the rut and you know, or you nailed the whoops and you got it. And that's a feeling that I've forever changed. And it only got to this point, you know, in the summer of last year where I was like, thought of chasing a different feeling. And that has always just been my motivation. The motivation has always been, there's a feeling that you need, and I don't care who you are, but there's a feeling that you need to win. And whether that be Eli or Cooper or Roxon or myself, you need that feeling to win so that you can ride at your best. And so the motivation is always try to achieve that. And that's what it's been. And I ran with it.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Really awesome to watch your career. And for me, grew up watching Supercross videos, driving to amateur nationals, 2002 bar to bar and all that good stuff. So I appreciate it. And it's a pleasure to watch. Thank you,
man. Thanks.
A couple more questions. Michael Antonovich.
All right, Chad, for you, you follow all forms of auto racing. Everyone knows you're a passionate fan through everything. So you always found contemporaries, and Valentino Rossi is one that everybody can think of. And you view James and Ricky as your biggest rivals, and at personal times like bygone enemies, like full-on enemy. How was it to realize later on in racing, after James had stopped and Ricky had stopped, that you guys all had something that was so in common that makes you just this pursuit to be the best guy?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're doing it for the common goal, you know, the same outlook or the same outcome. And unfortunately, one of us can win. Ricky and I always had this like respect for each other, you know, and obviously Ricky's older than me and was in it before I was. And so I think that I always looked up to him and always was a fan. And James and I just really came in at the same time. And I think it was just a little bit more personable. It was always going to last a little longer. But yeah, like you said, like once they retire, it's such a different feeling, because when I look back, you know, though you dreaded the moments at the time, that's the highlight reel that I play over in my own head. You know, when I think about the good times in my own personal career, the good times in the sport of Supercross, when it was thriving at its highest point, I think that that's the point, you know, and I was a big part of it with those two. And so you shared something, you know, with two individuals that are, you know, in their own right, the greatest athletes at the time. So I just feel proud that I was a part of it.
Alex Gilbert.
You've been a pioneer for the sport in Australia. paving the way for a lot of, young Australians to come over to America and race Supercross. What's your thoughts on seeing, the likes of Jet Lawrence and Hunter Lawrence and those really young kids arrive and do a good job over there in 250SX?
It's so hard to go and, race at the international level. What worked for me and what I think helped me in my step from Australia to Europe, America's is what I always think of America as being the highest. It's the highest of the highest. And what comes with that is, the TV, the media, what you've watched as a child your whole life. So you basically, you put it on this pedestal. And so achieving your goals here are much, much more difficult and much more challenging than what they are in Europe. Because I feel like in Europe, I was able to go and do my job and ride my dirt bike and learn a lot of the fundamentals that I needed to learn from, going from Australia to a big step up to Europe. But then it's a massive step to America. And I think that where a lot of Australians fall short is they always just want to shortcut it and come here. And as you can see, and I don't mean it in any disrespect, but like the Reardons, the Marmonts, these people, they come and go really quickly because it's unsustainable, because, you get swallowed up by the system. There's generations and there's years and years of, amateur kids coming out of here. So when you come here, you have to be ready to hit the ground running. And I think to see it, and I don't care what nationality he is, even as an Australian, to see a 16-year-old kid with the potential that Jet has, it's refreshing. Because in the last few years, it's been this, kind of like these groomed kids that sign these 5 to 6 year amateur contracts that go into pro, and it's this guaranteed thing. And I hope that Jet can break that mold. I hate that mold. I don't think it's successful. I don't think it's sustainable. So for me, I'm just excited to see an 18-year-old kid or 16-year-old kid come and show the talent and the speed, and he will figure it out, and he's going to figure it out. He's going to hit the ground, and figure it out. We all do. But I think come next year when, 17 years old, I think that we'll see, the growth in Jet.
Thank you.
Steve Giberson.
I guess this one sort of falls in the future fantasy category, but I know you're a huge fan of iRacing for the four-wheel side. What would you think if there was a way to simulate a similar type thing for Supercross and Motocross? A motion rig, a chance to do laps, maybe, skin off some of the chance of injury, things like that, and for the average person, actually show them how difficult this sport is.
Yeah, man, I wish that there was a way to bridge that gap. Being fortunate to get to race, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series last year, and then obviously my feeling with a motorcycle, and then doing iRacing, it would be so awesome to be able to have the average punter be able to, go race, or at least, because somebody who's raced a real race car and then somebody who does iRacing, iRacing is definitely not the real thing, but there's a lot of things in common. Where I've only experienced riding or racing a motorcycle on, PlayStation or Xbox or something like that, and it's the zero in common. So I think that would be, I mean, talk about a pipe dream. That would be awesome, to show the real world, let them experience what it's like. Because I'm fortunate enough where, like, I have my wife who's been around this a long time, and I put her on a motorcycle, and mentally or whatever, she thinks, oh yeah, you do this, this, and this, but she literally can't do it. And she freaks out, and she's like, how do you do this shifting thing? And my 10-year-old son complains all night after riding because, the front of his shin is so sore from shifting up and down gears. And these are things that I've been doing since I was 5 years old, and you just think nothing of it. But there are little things that it's so hard to have the world experience something like that.
Yeah, I've never done that Legends and Heroes, bike on a spring VR thing that they have in the pits, but I'm thinking it's probably not quite the same.
Yeah, I haven't done it either, so I don't know how close it is either.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Last question for you, Chad. Throughout your career, you've been a star in this sport. Back in the Ricky and the James days, you were a star. The Ryans, you were a star, and even now, still today, even though you're not at the same level, you're still a star of this sport. So you've been through these different generations, and you've seen these riders come through. I'm always kind of looking ahead at the next generation of stars and see who's going to be like the top guys in a few years that we all watch, that we tune in to watch. We're going to play a little team manager hat right now. If you were starting a team and you could sign any of the 250 riders that are in the field right now, 2 riders that you would want to groom and you think could be stars, who would Chad Reed pick?
Oof. I think Jet, because of his age and skill, I think that he's a no-brainer. What I like most about Jet is that he is young, and so therefore you could not fast track, but you could help him in his next moves and his next decision making and his next things that he's going to encounter. I don't personally believe that Jet has all those people around him right now. So I would love more than anything to be able to take a Jet Lawrence at such a young age and help him. Other than that, it's difficult to go past the current champ and likely champ of, Chase Sexton. Those 2 individuals are probably the youngest of the group, and show the most talent. And talent's something that you can't buy. I think champions are born, they're not built. But champions also need good guidance and good people around them. So they would be my two choices.
Awesome. And I think we all can agree that we expect to see both of them up there and being stars someday. So anyways, Chad, again, thank you for everything. Thank you for your career. And again, hopefully the door is still open and we get some more of you maybe in 2021. Thanks for coming on today, and good luck on Sunday. It's been awesome to watch you. And again, I speak for everybody. We all hope there's a little bit more. So thank you.
Yeah, me too. It's a weird ending for all of us. I don't think that I'm alone in this. I think that wrapping up a career, wrapping up a championship, there's definitely going to be something that's a little surreal about this moment, and it is what it is. Thankful that I get the opportunity to still go out and race. But yeah, definitely that pipe dream of coming back next year and doing a race or 2 or 3, who knows, maybe none. I don't know. Maybe I'll come challenge you in the booth. Show you how to really go through the whoops, like analyze the track correctly. See if we can have some fun. I just love the sport. I love that we have some young kids coming up. I've had a blast. It went way too fast. It feels surreal. Like I said, I still feel like an athlete. I still feel like I think like one. So it's hard to think that it's all coming to an end. But when I think of it is coming to an end, it's mixed emotions. It's sad. It's happy. It's proud. It's all the above. So appreciate all you guys coming on today and giving me my time.
Thank you, Chad.